Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And good afternoon to our distinguished panel of witnesses. Thank you for your willingness to help the subcommittees with our work. Before I begin, I would like to first personally thank my good friend, Chairman Jim Langevin and his staff, as well as Ranking Members Stefanik and Heiss and their staff for their cooperation, willingness to collaborate with us on this very important hearing. Mr. Langevin, in particular, has been a strong and long-time advocate for improving the infrastructure of our country in this measure and ensuring that necessary cybersecurity safeguards are in place to protect the United States against the multitude of threats that we face each and every day. He's made this issue a priority, and it's one that I share as chairman of the House Oversight Subcommittee on National Security. Today's hearing will examine how federal departments and agencies work together to protect the critical architecture upon which U.S. Internet and telecommunications systems depend. By working together on the issue, we hope that our subcommittees will better understand and be better positioned to identify and fill gaps and vulnerabilities across the various federal agencies and private sector for the purpose of protecting our nation's Internet infrastructure. Uninterrupted and secure access to the Internet is critical to daily life in the 21st century. Our constituents rely on the Internet to search for jobs, access bank accounts, read the news, and communicate with family. Companies in every industry, from Midwest manufacturers to the financial sector in New York, need the Internet to participate in the national and international economy. The U.S. military requires reliable and secure access to the Internet to conduct overseas operation, and it is also tasked with protecting our networks from cyber intrusions by foreign actors. Improving secure and reliable access to the Internet is also vital to economic development and promoting livelihoods in less developed countries or areas. In fact, our committee, I just came back from last weekend in a congressional delegation to Jakarta, where I met with young entrepreneurs from the Indonesian financial technology sector who all highlighted the need and importance of expanding Internet connectivity across Indonesia, more than 7,000 islands, to bring additional customers into the digital financial market and to bank the unbanked. Given our growing dependence on the Internet, even temporary disruptions, regardless of whether they are intentional or accidental, can have serious and cascading effects across industries and among our nation's critical infrastructure sectors. Yet no single U.S. government entity is responsible for securing the Internet and its underlying architecture. Instead, we have multiple departments and agencies which have various jurisdictional roles, including the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Defense, the Department of Commerce, from which we are fortunate to have representatives before us today, in addition to the White House, the Department of Energy, the Department of Justice, the Federal Communications Commission, which all have a role to play in securing this infrastructure. Adding to the complexity of this task is the fact that the physical components of our nation's telecommunications infrastructure, such as fiber optic cables and data centers and Internet exchange points, are largely owned by the private sector. This means that coordination and communication within the federal government and across the public and private sectors are all crucial to the Internet's security. The challenge we therefore face is that when everyone is in charge, then nobody is in charge. And while Internet activity appears to move seamlessly across digital pathways, this movement is cemented in real physical architecture and infrastructure. The security, which has often been taken for granted in physical fiber cables buried under our streets and under international waters, carries this traffic from point A to point B. Data centers and Internet exchange points serve to store and transfer this traffic from network to network. All of these physical assets can be damaged by natural disasters, human-caused accidents, or intentional attacks by sophisticated malign actors. As Ranking Member Stefanik has noted, and as former Director of National Intelligence Dan Coates highlighted in his 2019 Worldwide Threat Assessment, we know that our adversaries are already probing U.S. electric utility grids, election systems, pipelines, and financial networks for any signs of weakness. China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are all increasingly using cyber operations to steal data, disseminate misinformation, and I quote, to disrupt critical infrastructure, close quote. Russia, Director Coates said, and I quote, is mapping our critical infrastructure with the long-term goal of being able to cause substantial damage, close quote. Multiple open source reports in recent years have also noted increased foreign military activity around undersea data cables, raising concerns that hostile actors could be looking for ways to interfere with this critical infrastructure. To our witnesses, I realize that some of today's questions may drift into topics not suitable for an unclassified hearing. With that in mind, I just ask that you do your best to answer members' questions as candidly as possible, but you should not disclose any classified or sensitive security information. Instead, please let us know that you would prefer not to respond for national security reasons in an unclassified setting, and we can move on to the next question. We will, however, reserve the right to request that that information be disclosed in a more appropriate setting at a later date. So, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you again for your courtesy in holding this important hearing with me, and with that, I yield back.